Okay, see this says Visual Basic. I don't want Visual Basic. You should add channel points to force VB as oh gosh. That would be something, huh? Gosh. Okay, this one looks like C sharp. C sharp, okay. That's not a half bad idea, the Electric Havoc. Although it would be hard to, once I'm 80% into a C sharp, to switch gears and go over to VB. But, you know, I used to write VB.NET and VB scripts, so I could probably hold my own with that. Couchbase, let's just call this Unity example. And 472, MVC, and yep, that all looks good. I do have channel points, I think, enabled. They're called spacebucks, but I don't know if I have any interesting rewards in there or not. Okay, this looks more like it. So the startup, so we're going to look at configuring our dependency injection, and we're going to I'm just going to use it directly in a controller here. In reality, you probably want to set up a separate layer for business logic and or data access, you know, or mediator or whatever. But we're going to do it directly in the home controller to keep things as simple as possible. All right. Now let's see. Yeah, like a lot of points to force next project would be interesting. I don't think I've seen VB in many years. I think I did some VB on this very stream. Had to be a few weeks ago because a question came in on Stack Overflow that was, was using Visual Basic. So the answer didn't require me to use Visual Basic, but I thought, why not? Okay, so we're going to look for Unity here. I am not, was it a DNN plugin? I couldn't answer that based on the question itself. It could have been, for all I know, but there was nothing DNN specific about the question. Okay, now the thing with Unity, they seek out the light and convert. The thing with Unity is it's kind of an overloaded name now, unfortunately. So there's Unity, the game engine. That's not what we're talking about today. There's Unity, like a library. Hey, it's AJ, 2017. What's going on? Thanks for stopping in, AJ. Good to see you again. It's going great. We're just getting into some old school ASP.NET, not ASP.NET Core, some ASP.NET, and getting into some Unity. Had a question come through on Twitter, and we're going to try to work through it and see if some of the materials I put together almost 4 years ago will still apply here. So we got Unity for MVC. That's probably where I want to start. We're looking at 4 million downloads. That seems reasonable. So let's go ahead and do that, and we'll go latest stable version 5.11.1. Let's see what happens. Okay, it's adding all this stuff in here. Fine. How's it going with you, AJ? I noticed you're doing some NoSQL work the other day on Twitter. You were talking about it, and we were talking about something on Twitter yesterday, or is it this morning? I can't remember what it was. Code Mash, that's right. We're talking about Code Mash because we yes, right. Talking about badge scans at Code Mash. Okay, so I've got Unity added. And now how do we get started? So did it add any files? Because sometimes these packages will add things. So yeah, here we go. Unity config and Unity MVC activator. And so here's the dependency resolver. And here's the config. So this is where I actually put, so I'm guessing I don't have to touch this MVC activator unless I wanted to, you know, use per request lifetime manager, which I just absolutely might want to use that for a web application. And then here's where we actually register the various type mappings. Okay, so if we go back here to our home controller, and let's actually switch over to Couchbase server, which is not running. As I stopped it for some reason. Why did I stop it? Start DB. So actually the 6.5 general availability release just came out for Couchbase server. And let me just, if I can type here. Right here, you can see Couchbase 6.5 is GA. It's been in beta for a while. I've had two public betas. And this is the actual GA release. all the new cool stuff that's been added. So SDK3 is being released. Some async stuff has been added to these various libraries here. .NET is already pretty heavily asynced. We've got query enhancement, stuff like that. But so what I've done is I've installed that a Docker version of that locally here. It's not going to look too much different than the beta. Might be a few things you notice. I've also put it into developer preview mode. So this is the not for production version, but it's not the beta either. It's just if you put it in preview mode, you can use some of the preview features, but because they're preview, this is not suitable to put into production. So that's why that message is up there. If I were using 6.5 out of the box, it would not be in preview mode by default. You have to go out of your way to enable those preview features. Okay, so I've got this demo bucket here already. So let's just use that. So one of the things I could do here is I could just say iBucket. So I don't actually have the Couchbase client, not Couchbase, Couchbase client added to my project. I'm going to stick to the 2.7 because 3.0 is still in beta right now. We're going to stick to 2.7. This will be very similar with the beta though, the parts that we are focusing on today. Okay, over here, so the bucket, iBucket is the type of object we're going to use to interact with Couchbase. All right, so we could, for instance, say, let's see, document is new, document of dynamic type, it's fine, and give it an ID of doc dash. I like to use, no, is it file or path? File dot, I think it's path. Get random file name instead of GUID, it's just more fun. And content, we'll just make it a anonymous object. Give it a type equals dummy data, and name equals, again, path.get random file name, and foo equals bar. Okay, and then we're going to use that bucket to insert the document. All right, and then we'll get the document back out. Is bucket.get, and let's make this ID separate here. Put this right here, and use that. This is my standard, like, just make sure everything works and I can read and write. And I'm going to get dynamic and ID. Okay, and then we'll pass the doc to the view, and oh, this actually should be dot value. And we'll pass it to the view. So if we go down to the view, here we go. We got all kinds of stuff here. I'll just say, so we need to give this a model of type dynamic. And we'll just print out that model. That should probably be enough to demonstrate that it's working. And if I go ahead and run this, I should get an error. So I just want to make sure it's the right kind of error. Okay. Oh, that's not the error I expected. Invalid registration exception. Oh no, that is right. Okay. This is what I expected. So no public constructors available for type iBucket. So what is happening is that Unity is trying to find an object to pass into this home controller. I'll make this read only. But I haven't told Unity how to do that. So that's what we're going to do next. We're going to say container register type and iBucket. Now what I can do is I can pass in, I can give it another type, right? If I had that available, I could just say whenever you instantiate, whenever looking for this, give it an instance of this. But what I'm going to do is demo bucket. I believe if I just pass in the object, it will use that. So then where do I get demo bucket from? Okay. So one of the things you can do, there's multiple ways to do this. The easiest things you can do is there's something called cluster helper. And this comes with the .NET SDK. So I can say cluster helper.initialize. This only happens to happen once. So, I mean, I could put it here. I think that's probably okay. I need to know more about this, but since it's static, I'm guessing this is probably fine. And I give it a client configuration, which you'd probably want to pull from the web.config file if you wanted to put settings there. I'm not going to go into that. This is just easy enough to hard code. Servers equals new list of servers. Couchbase is distributed, so we can give it a list of more than one. I only have one running locally here. And then I need to also give it authentication. So password authentication, I happen to know that it's administrator and password, the absolute worst series of credentials. Now what I could do, can I give this a... Okay, it looks like I can't. So maybe I can just do this. Cluster helper dot open, git bucket demo. Is that going to work? Okay. So, because that would be the bucket. Demo bucket equals this. Now, let me just explain what's going on here. So this cluster helper is a singleton. And I can initialize it just one time is all I need to initialize it for the lifetime of this application. And I give it the configuration and the authentication. And so at that point, the cluster helper is initialized. This operation takes a little bit of work to do. It's got to go out and talk to the database, make a copy of the cluster manager information to store locally, and that can take some time. So this should happen one time. This is a relatively expensive operation. It should happen one time, or as few times as possible. Actually getting a bucket from the cluster helper, this is a relatively quick operation to do. Maybe the first time will take a little bit extra work, but it'll cache it from that point on. And the bucket is how we interact with the database. As I showed you here, I use the bucket object to insert data and get data back out. Okay, so it's then relatively easy, once we have the cluster helper initialized, to then get a bucket from that. So as you can see, this returns an iBucket object there. So I need to figure out a way to get Unity to either take this bucket object or to just call this method. So this is where my understanding of Unity kind of falls apart. So what are the options here? This is this injection member thing. I'm not quite sure what that means. So I'm going to look it up here. If anyone is familiar with Unity in the chat, now is the time for you to join in and help me figure out what I'm doing wrong here. Okay, it looks like old content. Register singleton objects. So it's not a singleton. But I'd be okay with like a factory method or like a lambda. Would be fine with that too. So let me just like a Unity getting started, something like that. So I want to avoid Unity 3D tutorials. Getting started, dependency injection, because I think Unity does a lot of stuff beyond just dependency injection. Okay, this is an older post, but let's see if this can help us here. Okay, looks like doing a lot of setup here. I'm not really going to go into that. Property injection, parameter injection is what I'm mostly... This is interesting. Resolve. Maybe that's what I want to do is I say resolve. Resolve iBucket with demo. Well, I could just say, it's not what I wanted to do. Is it? Will that work? Doesn't like that. Resolve or override. Okay, so that's not quite right. New parameter override. Okay, I don't quite understand this. It's possible to say the containers that resolve the dependency, explicitly ignoring the default behavior. Okay. Register type. Yeah, I'm not really registering a type per se. I might do that with other parts of the application, but okay. What if I say parameter override, something like that? And it's not tic-tac-toe. We're talking about get bucket. Will this work? Okay, so I don't need to have this separate statement here. Okay, so that's good. So I think at this point, whenever a constructor asks for iBucket, it's going, and we don't need to call this. We just call this this bucket. I don't know, Couchbase bucket. I don't know what that name, how that name helps, except maybe in logging. And it's going to get that bucket demo. It's going to resolve that. I'd be curious if there was something like a there's register singleton. I may want to register singleton, but let's see how this works. Okay, so the other important step, and this is always important to do, is clean up. I think it's application end. At this point, we're going to say cluster helper dot close. And this is going to clean up any of the connections that are sort of outstanding, any of the resources that the cluster helper singleton has a hold of. We want to make sure to clean those up when the application ends. Okay, so assuming I've done this correctly with Unity, let's run it and see what happens. Okay, so I've got an exception, invalid registration exception. No public constructor is available for iBucket. Yeah, so this is apparently not the correct way to do it. Commander Radical, thank you for the follow. Thank you for joining us, Commander Radical. Hopefully you know something about Unity, because I am struggling a little bit trying to figure out how to resolve a dependency with an object. Nope, sorry. Okay, well, it was worth a shot. And this is an even older blog post here, so maybe we can get something more up to date. Dependency injection, unit testing in Unity / Unity 3D. No. Let's see. Property injection is not what I want. Unity container. So this is, okay, documentation. This is, I think, what I want. Tutorials, resolution. Resolving collections of object, not collections of object. Deferring the resolution of objects. I think that's what I want. Create a delegate. Resolver. This is very different than what I've seen other structure map and ASP.NET Core's built-in registration look like. Let's see, resolution is what I'm looking at here. Collections of objects by a particular type. I don't really want a collection. Type T, string name, resolve method, default registrations. Yeah, that's all fine. Except I don't want to just associate one type to another type. I want it to be one type with an object or one type with a function that returns an object. That's sort of my goal here. Name registrations. That's fine too, but it's not really what I'm looking for. Deferring resolution. I think this is probably what I want. Okay. Create a delegate for a component named myClass. Register a mapping for it and perform deferred resolution when required. Other code here. MyContainer.resolve. Register type. Okay. I don't quite understand this example. It looks like it's still registering type here, but this resolver create a delegate. Well, let's just see what happens here. Move this over on this side. Okay, so this is not working. Getting an error there. I want to say container dot resolve. Say a func of iBucket. Can I do something with this? Like, Unity is the worst. I have not used it that much, so I'm not familiar. Okay, so that's just looking for... Wait, what's the error here? Okay, so I don't know what that is. Unity has been around for a while, so some of these decisions in syntax are probably based on early limitations of C#, is my guess. So container.register type of iBucket, but I don't have a class that I want to give it. My class instance. Resolver. Yeah, see, I'm just kind of at a loss here. Because I mean, with structure map or with ASP.NET, I would just say something like iBucket. So anytime you ask for iBucket, I'd provide a lambda that would say, you know, cluster helper dot get bucket in the name of the bucket. Something like that would probably be fine. I may want to make this a singleton, or I may want this to be tied to a HTTP lifetime. Not a huge issue, I don't think, in this case. But I can't really figure out how to do that with Unity here. Solution. Let's see. I'm just browsing through the documentation here a little more. Okay. Registration. So maybe not resolution, but registration. Instance registration. There's an existing instance within the container. You specify the instance type and optional lifetime. So maybe I just do this, register instance. Maybe that's all I need to do. Register instance. And I'm going to say cluster helper dot get bucket demo. Will that do it? Is that enough information? It looks like it's figured out based on this little tip here that it is an iBucket, and I'm passing it because this returns iBucket. Okay, all right. So let's see what happens if I do this. So we get another Unity error. Okay, it's working. So there we go. If I go back here to my database, you can see my dummy documents in there. Right there, it's got the random looking characters from one of my favorite methods in the framework, which is path.getRandomFileName. It doesn't get random file, gets random file name. And this is designed, you know, to if you want to create a temp file somewhere, you'll get a random file name that won't collide. But you can also use just get random strings. Of course, they look like file names, as you can see here. You know, P1H5 PEMN.WTB. It's a file name with an extension, right? But it's a perfectly good random string. So if I refresh this, you'll see the string is random each time. And what you don't see is the key. It's also random each time. Retrieve this, you can see it's got all these different keys there. So there we have it.